Alright, how's it going, y'all? Today we're going to be talking about the new Synology hard drives, and I've got one of them here, as well as the forced compatibility with some of their new enterprise-grade equipment to only use these hard drives. So this is some news that came out fairly recently, that Synology was going to start forcing you to use basically their hard drives that they just released on their upper echelon enterprise NASs. These are the new RSxs series, which are really only for enterprise users, or at least they're sold that way. I could definitely see some video production houses that I would not necessarily call enterprise still needing them, but it is kind of designed to be very high IOPS, very powerful, huge storage backends for whatever an enterprise might need. At least that's how Synology is selling them. I'm actually not quite sure exactly how much market share they have in the enterprise users. I know that enterprise is something that's very slow to transition over and generally already has their own IT staff who can upkeep a NAS, meaning you don't need the DSM's really nice and friendly features, which makes it a really great feature for small and medium-sized business and home users. Enterprise users would much rather have raw power than an easy-to-use interface. Though having an easy-to-use interface is definitely appreciated, it's just not as critical to people who really know what they're doing and can take the time to figure it out. So I'm not quite sure how much market share they've got in the enterprise group, but they've definitely been moving there more and more with these more and more powerful NASs. Alright, and so now let's talk about the new hard drives. So Synology about a month ago released their new hard drives. They're their hard drives, really they're co-branded Toshiba drives, but they have a custom Synology firmware on there. And this custom firmware is actually a huge deal, according to Synology at least. From Synology's website, it says they have a 23% better throughput with this custom firmware than if it was not on there from multi-users trying to read from the NAS. Now I have absolutely no way of testing this because quite frankly, I just do not have a good enough of a setup with multi-user clients and the ability to test this, but I would not be too surprised if it was true. Quite frankly, when you control the hardware and the software, and the firmware in this case, you can actually get much better performance because you do not have to adhere to all these special commands. Instead, you can control the drive because you own the drive. You know what the drive is going to do. And so having that custom firmware layer in there allows DSM and the drive to talk a lot better, apparently. And so it might be able to do things like, oh, hey, I'm going to need this later, so I'm going to grab it now, and a lot better communication like that. I don't have too much information on that firmware, but I imagine it's able to do special things like that. And that's where they're getting that 23% speed increase with multiple sequential reads coming from the NAS with multiple clients. I have no way of verifying it, but you can take them at that word for that. Though if it is true, I would definitely say that a lot of enterprise users would probably want to switch over to that because from my findings, honestly, the Synology drives are actually cheaper than the Ironwolf Pros, at least on BH Photo. And since they are pretty price competitive with the Ironwolf Pros, and they both have 5-year warranties, but this is a custom Synology firmware that's guaranteed to work with DSM, I actually, to enterprise users who are going to be using these drives and would either be picking between the Ironwolf Pros or the Synology drives, I actually would probably recommend the Synology drives. They both have the same warranty. The Synology drives have a longer mean time between failures, and the Synology has that custom firmware on there. And so all that stuff actually makes it a pretty decent idea for these bigger enterprise users to go to those because that's where they're really going to get those features. I, however, do not love the fact that they're being forced into this market. This is pretty much a cash grab for Synology because it does really increase their market share. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It is something that's super commonplace with just about any big provider. You can't buy a Dell server without having to buy the Dell hard drives with it. It's all those things though that is one of the reasons why a lot of people like Synology, is it's that open, hey, bring your own drives mentality. Though for enterprise users, it's not as big of a deal because they have a lot more money, honestly, and they have expectations for things to work perfectly, and if not, for repairs to happen immediately. And so if Synology can get this extra money and hopefully start putting in more enterprise features, those enterprise features are going to be able to trickle down through DSM into home users as well, and those are mostly going to be stability and speed. Two things that are absolutely crucial for enterprise users, but home users will absolutely love them too. So I don't love that they did this, but it is a very commonplace, and I do see why they did it. I'm actually quite fortunate enough to have a POC now at Synology, and I asked them about this and specifically asked them if they were going to be bringing it down to the DS line. And he said no, they have no plans to bring it down to the regular disk stations, and I really would take his word at this. Synology bringing this force compatibility down to their lower level NASs, I think would definitely cause them to lose a lot of the market share they've been building up for so many years. And I think even if you include the extra profit they would be making by selling these co-branded hard drives, it's not going to make up for how much losses they're going to have and how much harder it will be for them to grow their market share. And so for those reasons, I do believe that Synology is not going to be trying to bring this to any of the lower level NASs. The RS series might be at risk, and the XS series I could also see being at risk. I would really prefer them to just stay at those XS Plus, maybe the SAS series if they ever make SAS drives, and maybe the Flash Station series, because those are really ones that are only enterprise users are going to buy. All the other lower level NASs, I think a lot of home users and small business users end up buying and don't want to be locked into this hard drive compatibility and do not need the fact that, hey, it's got all these great custom firmware things. Personally for me, I think the next time I refresh my NAS and get larger hard drives, I'm actually really going to look at the price point of the Synology drives. If they're pretty close to any of the other drives I would be considering for the storage size, I personally think I'm probably going to go with the Synology drives. I've got to test them out more, but honestly having that compatibility with the firmware and that possible really fast speed increase is honestly not a bad thing to have. And if the price makes sense, it could be a great feature. Though I really do wish they would not force people on this. Especially one of the really nice benefits of Synology was you could switch from another system, just bring your hard drives over and get everything up and running without having to buy a whole new system, which can basically double your prices generally because hard drives honestly end up being at least half the total cost of a NAS in my opinion. Alright, and so as I said, Synology was nice enough to send me a few of their 8TB hard drives, as well as a DS1621 Plus for testing, and so you'll see a few more videos on that, but I've not gone through and done any kind of review on these hard drives yet. I actually just opened this out of the package today, and so go ahead and put any questions you have about these drives, or anything you'd like me to put in a review about these drives that I'm planning on making in the comments below. Alright, well that's going to be it for this video. Have a good one. Bye!